Smoke No Fire by David Barry Temple. Chapter 1, excerpt. The day Jim Morrison died. He was 17 years old the summer of '71. Johnny Livewire needed a job. He searched through the want ads and found something he thought he could do. Messenger. Being a messenger at the American Blueprint Company suited Johnny fine. This is the end. He hated the thought of being cooped up in a building all summer. He could spend his time grooving in the streets of Manhattan, and New York City drew him in. The handsome, 6-foot-tall, haggard youth with long, wavy brown hair to his shoulders, parted in the middle, Romanesque nose, facial hair he didn't bother shaving, in his black, unmarked, V-neck t-shirt, black, high-top, steel-toed construction boots blending into black denim jeans. Wrapped his hard body with leather belts to fit. Johnny's deep, sharp, hazel green eyes carried the warmth of his soul to many a high school co-ed, convinced and willing to feel his tenderness, mold herself to his tenderness, and become a woman with him, almost become a rebel with him. LSD, marijuana, Hiram Walker, Blackberry brandy, and Marlboro Red. The chute was greased, and many a young lady slid him in. Mom didn't take too kindly to Johnny's wide-open disregard for house rules. At least she didn't bother him about smoking cigarettes in the apartment. She smoked Tarryton herself, but she only gave him $5 allowance a week. In the fall, Johnny would be a high school junior. He had to work the summer just to try to earn $1. He took the West End BMT up to Times Square on 42nd Street and walked to Fifth Avenue. The American Blueprint Company, with offices on the 5th floor, South Side, would be his headquarters. When he learned they would give him car fare to deliver the parcels, he had an idea. The first day of work, he left Brooklyn early to avoid the rush hour crush and carried his bicycle onto the T train, riding it past Bryant Park and the main library, chaining it to a parking sign pole on 41st Street. No one would know. He pocketed the tokens. The time he saved, he would have wasted underground on walking, perusing the Midtown record stores, especially King Carol. He would leave a deposit on a record he wanted and pick it up before heading home. Many a record was the first test copy in New York, like Blues Image or Iron Butterfly albums. His collection grew and his rock knowledge deepened. The rest of his earnings went for slices of pizza, nickel bags, and Forex natural lambskin condoms. Hank sat on one of the dozen mismatched chairs in the grubby messenger's lounge. The wobbly ceiling fan kept the smudged, windowless room barely cooled in the summer swelter. The air tinged with the smell of blue ink and oil from the presses outside in the large, worn, high-ceiling workroom, stuffed with drafting tables looking like a bland pool hall. The tangy smell of unwashed clothes wafted off Hank and touched Johnny's sorry nostrils as he sat waiting for his next assignment, reading his pocket copy of quotations of Chairman Mao, protected by its shiny red plastic cover. Hank sat a few feet across from Johnny, shoes off, cross-legged, only brown-spotted tumors on his downturned, balding head, picking fuzz bunnies from between his toes through the hole in his sock. Hank waited his turn too. Philip Unger, an unkempt, overweight man-child in his late 20s, waited too, doing a word jumble. They didn't mind waiting. They got paid by the hour. The trip meant car fare and tips from clients to Johnny. He took their turns gladly. Hank was saved for special deliveries the manager didn't think Philip, Johnny, or other young messengers could find. Johnny sat like a roach in a corner, come to life by the manager's call. Johnny, come here, the manager called in his drudging room, holding a 3-foot-long cardboard cylinder. Bring this to this address on 65th off Madison. Take the IRT.
Father, yes, son, I want to kill you.
Okay, boss, Johnny said, jumping to his feet, placing the 2 tokens in his pant pocket. Stepping into the dilapidated hall to the original hand-cranked elevator, Johnny waited. Waited for the filthy, worn uniform of an old black elevator operator to reach his floor. Push open the accordion doors, closed in, crank for the slow trip down. He walked around the block, unchained his bike, and headed up Madison, swerving through the midtown congestion to the client, delivered, tipped by, and returned to base. Johnny was just about to enter the building when a headline on a stack of New York Post newspapers outside a curbside kiosk caught his eye. Third rock star, Jim Morrison, dead at 27. The date was July 9th. It said he had been discovered almost a week before. Devastated, Johnny went to Zoom Zoom, the fast food restaurant next to the Blueprint building, for bratwurst with a snap when you bite into it. Sat and read the dreadful news. His hero was gone.
All right. What an amazing reading by David Barry Temple. So, many writers' works are semi-autobiographical. Is this piece about you?
Well, I was 17 in 1971, but I was not as handsome as Johnny Livewire.
Johnny Livewire looks like Jim Morrison. What do you mean?
Many people at that time emulated their rock star heroes, as did Johnny Livewire. I don't think it was an accident that Johnny Livewire looked like Jim Morrison. Perhaps he looked better than Jim Morrison.
So, how does this excerpt fit into chapter 1 and the theme of the whole novel?
Chapter 1 in Smoke No Fire is Johnny's origins in the world of rock and roll. He needs to find a place in history, and the first chapter is the place that he finds, the music that he evolves into. So it's a very important chapter. You could see where Johnny is going in his history by reading the first chapter and seeing his influences.
Yeah. So, does Jim Morrison appear anywhere else in this novel?
Actually, he does. Later on in the novel, Johnny Shortwave is at a poetry reading on the roof of a warehouse in Chinatown, New York. It's the 1-year anniversary of the death of Jim Morrison, and Patti Smith is doing a eulogy that Johnny Livewire steals the show at with his own rendition of My Wild Love. Ironically, this is Patti Smith also becoming, as she said in her autobiography, a rock star because she thought Jim Morrison did it, she could do it too. Johnny Livewire thought that, well, if Patti Smith could copy Jim Morrison, then he could do it too.
Okay. So, you call your book a novella, not a novel. What is the difference?
A novella tries to evoke a mood and not expand the story too much beyond that mood that it's set to create. It's like a painting, where a novel might be more of a journal, a story of a person's history. A novella is more an image of a feeling. Also, this novella is not as long as a standard novel would be. That would be stretching the feeling too long.
Yeah, you definitely catch the mood. You sound like a young Jim Carroll from Basketball Diaries. So, tell me about your motivation for writing Smoke No Fire.
As a writer, I want to get to more difficult topics. For me, I would love to get into science fiction. I see this work as an evolution for me, going from a short story book that I wrote called Forgotten People of Taiwan, and a collection of poetry that I wrote about the Han River here in Taichung. Smoke No Fire is a next step, a more extensive work, and it itself would lead into the longest work of fiction that I'm doing, a novel that's tentatively called Life's Progressive Movement. So this is the next step in my writing development, I hope.
Yeah, you've definitely been developing your skills as an author. I love all your books. So, what does the title Smoke No Fire mean?
Well, you've heard the phrase, where there's smoke, there's fire, which means that you can tell what has resulted. You could tell what has begun by what has resulted. in Smoke No Fire, you see the origins of a rock star that don't amount to any flames, but if you will, smolder, never reaching a pyre, never becoming a fire, but there is smoke, and one would wonder, where does the smoke come from? But in this case, Smoke No Fire, the fire comes after the smoke, if at all, and I'll let the reader find out if there really is a fire at the end of this smoke or if it just burns to ashes.
So, do you think this book is going to catch on fire with the mainstream?
It's an entertainment that other people would like reading. Younger people, meaning people in their 20s and 30s, would be interested in the historical value. Older people in the 30s or 40s and 50s may see themselves in the character of Johnny Livewire. Perhaps they have had events in their life that were smoldering or burning in their past. Johnny Livewire survives. I won't tell you how he survives, but his past does not follow him. He always lives in the present. So it may be a message to people who are reading the book in the same theater of life. I think young readers and older readers alike would enjoy reading Smoke No Fire.
All right. What a wonderful reading by my father. And I want to say happy birthday to you. And where can people reach you and how?
Well, this Smoke No Fire is a work in progress, and the reader has the fortune of being able to read along with the development of the novella by going to my website. My website is www.readingsandwritings.jimdo.com. That's writings as in R-I-D-I-N-G-S, and Jimdo is J-I-M-D-O. There, the reader can also find other creative writing that I have been doing over the years.
All right. So it's obvious Jim Morrison had a huge influence in your life. If Jim Morrison was to come back as a ghost, what would you say to him?
Jim Morrison is a spirit. You got that right. That he would come back. I don't think Jim Morrison has ever left, because the spirit stays with you. Maybe has no corporal body, but the idea and the motivation that Jim Morrison put into his art is eternal, and his spirit will always be with us.
If Jim Morrison was still alive today, what kind of awards, accolades, accomplishments do you think we would have seen from him?
The interesting thing is, a lot of people believe that Jim Morrison disappeared from public life because he didn't want accolades and awards. He was a poet who felt his work was co-opted and corrupted by the corporations that controlled his music. I don't think Jim Morrison would be any happier than he is now, being remembered for his poetry and his music, and I don't think he would have felt any better winning awards for what he did, because he knew what he was doing was a spirit and not a product.
All right. Wow. Well, that's an amazing interview with the great writer, David Barry Temple.
I'm not a great writer. Why do you keep saying that?
All right. Do you want to shout out anybody or tribute to anyone?
I love you, Ariel. I love your three sisters. I love Leona. And I hope everybody who sees this can be as fortunate as I am with such a beautiful family to love.
All right. That wraps it up. We love you too, Dad.